Hello, it's the afternoon. Everyone's a little tired. When Jesper he asked me if I wanted to come and give a talk about business models in games, I must admit I spilled my coffee because I am not a business guy. I am a visual designer turned game designer, and as most game studio CEOs, I have had to learn learn everything on the job, basically. And even then, the business side of it hasn't come easy to me. I did not get into the games industry to make a lot of money. I could have done that in the startup space and the design space that I worked in for a decade before starting my own game company. And at this game company, I have spearheaded a lot of questionable decisions that came from a place of joy rather than a place of financial reasoning, right? But here you are, listening to me talk about business. Because after I cleaned up the coffee, I thought, I decided that even though I don't have a business degree and I'm not running a massively profitable company, I still might have something to share when it comes to creating a sustainable platform for making games. Now, I see a lot of developers struggle staying afloat in a very fickle industry. And I see some things that I think we collectively we need to change if the Danish games industry is going to be a diverse and prosperous place. And I'd really like to see that. So I took some time out of my calendar, which is busy because I have 2 little kids, live in Køge, down south. But I took some time out and made this talk, which for the lack of a better title, I'm simply calling How Not to Die in the Games Industry. Yes. So my mandate was to talk about business models, right? But I think that's part of a bigger conversation, really. So here's what I'd like to cover today. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Danish games industry and examine why it's so hard for us to just make some more money, right? Why are we not just doing that? Then I'm going to talk about how to fund your game. Anyone in here working on a game? Game? Yes, lots of games. Awesome, yay. Then I'm going to talk about how to make money off that game, right? Important. And finally, I'm going to try to string all these things together in a few realizations that we've made ourselves that has helped us so far not die in the games industry. At the end of it, hopefully I will have imparted some mental models and some takeaways that will help you also not die. And I want to add that I'm going to talk a lot about the Danish games industry, but I actually think that a lot of the views here are very universally applicable to other regions as well. So before I get into all of that, I guess a short introduction is probably in order. My name is Michael, and I run the entertainment studio Northplay. We're a small independent studio from Copenhagen. It's all mine. I have no investors. It's just mine. I do work there with some amazing people, though, and we make our own games, and we also do work for hire. We're well into our 5th year now, which I guess says more about the industry than us, that we're not considered new anymore. But our first game was called Conduct This, which spun out into a franchise that we've shipped on both iOS and Android and Steam and for the Nintendo Switch. We've also built a lot of other games. These are some of our own games built with our own IPs with varying degrees of success and different business models, but a lot of lessons learned along the way. I'll get into some of those. But we also build things for clients. One of our big clients is the Danish national media, DR, and we work with their teams at Ramachan to build things for kids in Denmark. That's cool when you have kids in Denmark, attempting to lift that cultural heritage that we all grew up on here, and push the boundaries of what sort of games people have come to expect from DR. And this is a game that we shipped in April called Naturspillet that we're very happy with, and we're working on other cool stuff with DR. But we've also worked with a bunch of other clients delivering entertainment products to them, and we like to make things for people. So this is not a talk about Northplay, but I think it helps to understand who we are and what we are about when we are going to take my experiences and turn them into actionable advice. So that's some of us. Anyways, to understand the business that you are all about to enter, I think it makes sense to start by taking a look at the industry. So let's look at the games industry in Denmark. How hard is this thing even, right? according to Producentforeningens numbers from their 2018 report, we have 186 game-producing companies in Denmark. You're about to start a bunch more companies. Around 1,008 full-time employees. I don't have newer numbers than these because they're not available. No. Yes. But for the sake of this argument that I'm about to make, these numbers will do just fine. I don't think this has changed all that much in terms of development. Here's the development of game-related companies in Denmark over the past couple of years. This looks pretty good, right? You're looking at this saying, oh yeah, it's going that way, right? Generally, we've seen an increase in the number of studios since 2009. And to be fair, this data doesn't show us how many studios have died, right? Or whether or not we're just sort of starting more and more studios and then more and more are dying. But generally, the games industry in Denmark is expanding like it is everywhere else in the world. Now, the number of active studios in the region is like a great health indicator for the industry, as it tells us something about the sustainability of the environment, right? More total studios means that more people can make a living working in games. Now, that same report has a development of revenue here depicted in millions of kroners, right? We've seen a slight decline from 15 to 17, but generally the games industry's revenue has grown since 2009. Ending in 2017 with a total annual revenue of 916 million Danish kroner. Over here, right behind me. You can't see that. I'll just cover real quickly. Okay. Cool. It's too bad that we've seen a slight regression in the revenue here at home because the global games industry is growing like crazy. Here's some numbers from the intelligence company Newzoo showing both the factual and the projected global revenue for games across different platforms. And I have a lot of thoughts on why we in Denmark have failed to meet this growth, but that's another talk entirely. So, unfortunately, now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. This report also includes this nugget here, and here's where the rosy picture kind of starts to break down. The 10% most profitable companies in the games business makes 98.65% of the profits. This is, as I said, from Producentforeningens 2018 report. It's from this house. Right here where we are. I have no reason to believe that these numbers have changed much in the past year. This is bad. This is really bad. Let's do some back of the napkin math here, right? So the total annual revenue of the games industry in Denmark is a whopping 916 million Danish kroner. Awesome, we're all millionaires, right? Because there's not that many of us, right? But then 10% of the studios eat 98.65% of the revenue, or 903.63 million to be exact, leaving the rest of us with 12.39 million. The remaining 90% of the studios is roughly around 167 studios, meaning according to these numbers, the average revenue per studio is 75K annual. 75K per studio. That is, of course, not the reality. The reality is probably much more like the top 10% of those studios make all the money, and most of them make zero. So, what does that tell you? We're not very good at making money off games in Denmark. For us to begin to fix this, we really need to let this sink in. The reasons are many, and we won't be able to cover all of them, all the systemic issues that we have in Denmark in this talk, but we're going to try to chip away at this, okay? So why can't we just make some more money, right? How hard can this be? We make good games, right? We have good people working in good studios. Here's some sobering numbers. Anyone in here working on a mobile game? Any hands? Of course, Riley's working on mobile games. Yeah, a couple of mobile games here, yeah. I made my first mobile games back when the iPhone was very new, and have since worked on quite a few titles. Our first game as Northplay Conduct This was a mobile game. And there's a lot of math in mobile games today, but already back in 2016, things were starting to look pretty bleak. SurveyMonkey Intelligence reported a median revenue from iOS and Android games at around $150. Now, the averages in this industry is almost useless, because basically you have a very small group of people making mindless amounts of revenue, kind of like in the Danish games industry actually, and then hundreds of new games coming out every day, pulling the data in every direction. But I think the general story is that most mobile games doesn't make enough money to pay for the computer it was developed on, and unless you really know what you're doing, and not a lot of people do, and a lot of them then feels forced into this hyper casual thing, and it's great when people are good at it, but a lot of people also find themselves suddenly doing way more business design than game design. It is a very high risk game to bet your livelihood on this platform, and most developers, they find this out way too late. So I could have a whole separate talk about the mobile gaming landscape. It's both fascinating and kind of sad in my opinion, but for the purpose of this talk, I just want to say that making money on mobile is incredibly hard. Harder now than it ever was before, and it's an arms race of user acquisition, retention mechanics, and clever business models. And it's a game where you generally need a large sum of money to make a small sum of money. Great. Okay, but how about good old PC games, right? We've had the indie revolution, right? Anyone in here working on a PC game? Yes, a couple of PC gamers. Yes. A Forbes story broke earlier this year with a Steam Games report that says that 80% of all games earn under $5,000 in the first 2 weeks. Now, as most people know, that's usually where you're making most of your money on Steam, well, on any game sale, really. The rest of it is a long tail and through sales. So that actually means that the average PC game could be looking at around like a lifetime revenue of around maybe less than 10K US dollars. Anecdotally, I've been part of and heard of good teams that launched on Steam and made less than that. Even games I considered good. These are not bad games, by all means. And I'm not saying that you can't make money off Steam or particularly other platform exclusives, and as always, average revenue is kind of a deceiving metric in many ways. But if you're building a game and you're going to launch on one of these platforms, you need to pay attention to this stuff to set the right expectations. Okay. There's a lot of other data points we could pull in this thing that is by some people being called the Indiepocalypse. But generally, this is the point I'm trying to make. Technology and tools have advanced to the point where game development is a lot more accessible to a lot more people. That's great. That's you guys. That's us. We can all make more experiences for people. We get more diverse stories. It's fantastic. The problem is that also creates more competition, right? Competition is very stiff, and distribution and getting the word out about your game is even more important and even harder than it used to be. The consumer today also has a lot of other options for free entertainment. So that the prices are simply being raised to the bottom. And this forces developers to think up different business models that has nothing to do with good game development. And add to that your products will exist in markets where the platform owners usually take a 30% cut. This used to be balanced out by more powerful distribution, but that benefit is quickly being watered out in an oversaturated market, right? So this entire landscape, this picture I'm painting for you, it basically means that if you're going to start a game studio in 2020, the difficulty has just been upped to insane. It is very, very difficult. You need to be really smart about how you fund your projects and how you spend your time and what games you make. So, that sets us off on the next part of the talk. Let's get into it. You guys have games you want to make, right? This is your game. It's right here. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you time. And there's a million decisions you're going to have to make. But at the very top level, these are the two resources that you're going to have to think about. And if you're hiring someone to work on your game with you, time is essentially money. So it's just that one resource. In the classical sense, business models usually pertains to how you make money off your products. But I feel like to talk about running a successful, sustainable company, we really have to talk about where that money comes from before you make a dollar. So let's start by looking at how you can get money to make your game. How many in here are looking for funding for games right now? Good chunk. Good. Okay. So let's play how to fund your game. So your game is what you'd like to build. And then you can choose to fund it with one or more of these special funding cards each with their own pros and cons, right? We'll dive into each of them. Let's start with a very common and age-old card. Oh, you guys probably know what's coming, right? The publisher. Yes. The publisher has some very obvious benefits for the fledgling studio. This is probably the card that has the most variation, so you need to examine it very carefully before you play it. But let's see what this bad boy can do. First of all, they provide you with someone else's money. Now, this is great. It's not your money, meaning that the publisher will take some of the risk off your game development costs up front. How much you get and when you get it is negotiable, but it all really depends on the type of game you're making and the publisher you get on board, right? The publisher can also bring expertise in bringing your game to market. Now they might have, marketing muscle that you don't have. They've got press contacts, better access to key people in distributions. They'll get you into conventions. They might have a brand that can lend some legitimacy to potential customers. Now, the publishing business is changing a lot, but with more control generally going to the artists, particularly if you sign with someone like Coffee Stain or Devolver. But generally, signing with a publisher might mean some loss of creative control. So they're looking to sign games that are sellable, and they have a very certain idea of what that sellability looks like in their game catalog. Having a publisher also means that you got an entity between you and the players. Now, I've heard a lot of stories where this creates like a very inflexible situation when it comes to things like update cadence, sales, community contact, things like that. But the biggest one, and definitely, how publishing deals is definitely this one. How publishing deals can outright kill a studio if the game doesn't do well. So part of most publishing deals involve the publisher recouping their investment when a game launches, right? Makes sense. They're going to make back their money before you get yours. However, games are high-risk investments. And as we discussed before, most games don't even break even. So this means that you'll get zero revenue from your game, leading to a lot of situations where liquidity runs out and you have to fire people or close the studio. And even the ironic part, we've seen this many times in Denmark, even if you have mild success, nothing like mild success, you can still die. It paints developers into a corner where you either make a huge successful game or you run off a cliff and go broke. So this sucks. Studio death sucks because all of that institutional knowledge that you've built up in your team, it disappears. And it's left for the other studios to hire them and pick and choose between a medieval battlefield, right? And we'll be going, you, not you. And it's bad. That's not a desirable outcome for the games industry in Denmark. And maybe you need, with your team, to make several games before that knowledge starts to pay off. And in many cases, when you're starting out and you're going with a publisher as the first thing, you're basically betting the whole studio on that single game. A very long talk about the pros and cons of the publisher path could be made, but I'm not the one to make that talk because we have self-published everything we've done. The special ability, each of these cards have a special ability that you need to play when you're playing this card is revenue while recouping. A lot of publishing deals these days allow developers to still get some revenue while the publisher recoups their investment. This can keep you out of the worst liquidity troubles as you readjust and start a new project. Okay, so here's the next one is a rare funding card. If you can find the right fit, you might be golden, right? The investor. The investor here represents any one entity that is not a publisher who would like to invest in your entertainment product. The investor is also someone else's money, so that's great. They come in many shapes and sizes, from your affluent uncle to your local business mogul. One common issue with investments, though, is that when the investor doesn't understand the high-risk investment they're making and the intricacies of turning a profit in this industry. And the special ability that you're chasing with this card is to find someone who does understand that, right? An angel investor, someone from within the industry who can contribute more than just dumb money. Dumb money is lethal. You will die from dumb money. Another funding card popular in the Danish games industry. Jesper knows what's coming now. Grants, boom, right? In Denmark, that usually means DFI. The Danish Film Institute, which kind of tells you a lot about how games rank on the political priority list, doesn't it? You go to the Danish Film Institute. You know what? The games industry exports for more millions of kroners than the Film Institute does, or for the Danish film industry. So I hope that's going to change at some point in the future very soon. There are other grants and places to seek cultural support, and they might all come with their own set of pros and cons. But if you want to say something general about grants, then let's start with the good thing, right? It's someone else's money that doesn't need to be paid back. You know, this is huge, this is amazing, right? However, often the application process can be time consuming. You need to write very detailed descriptions of exactly what you're building in an industry that is notorious for producing best results through iterative design. Most grants are given in support of arts and culture. In the case of DFI, that is exactly what it is. It is cultural support. They're not here to support your commercial products. Sellability of your game is not a concern, and it's not really their mandate to support it. So whether you like it or not, this skews game design towards the grant goals. So of course it does. It makes perfect sense, right? I'm not saying art and commercial viability of games can't go hand in hand. In fact, that's actually one of my main points when I'm ending this talk. But there's more examples of artsy games that never gain traction because it's just not something a viable share of the market is interested in purchasing. So when you're applying for such grants, notice how you will accentuate aspects of your game, not necessarily because they're more sellable, but because you're more likely to get a cultural grant out of it, right? It's about Vikings or something else, right? Because it's culture, right? So, in my opinion, one of the big contributors to the state of the Danish game industry and our lack of success growing our games is poor access to funding sources that support commercial ventures. Now, with something like DFI being one of the only watering holes, I even heard over here a conversation like, yeah, let's apply for DFI. It's like, it's one of the only places you go to, really, because not a lot of other places are left, right? Of course, you're going to get a lot of games that might have great cultural value, but it won't support a growing studio. So the special ability you want to use with grants is if you're making a smaller or a niche game where the design aligns with the goals of the grant, then go for it, and it's great. If you're already thinking about this and it's part of your game, cool, perfect, grants. Here's another popular funding source, the bootstrap. Bootstrapping is the art of paying for the whole thing yourself. Either through hard work and squalor, or somehow funding the means to get through the game development process through other venues. Now, the great thing about bootstrapping is that it's on your own time, right? No one's rushing you. You don't have any looming deadlines or milestones other than the ones dictated by yourself and your own economy. Now, the bad thing about bootstrapping is that it's on your own time, with very few external factors pushing you through that process. It can be a desert walk to finish something, and many people bootstrap themselves right out of the games industry. So the special ability you need to use when playing this card, it's a very simple one, and should be chanted forever and ever in this industry. Build smaller games. This is a good advice any day with any of the funding sources I'm talking about here, but especially if you're bootstrapping. Make them smaller. You're not, you're small teams. Build smaller games. They'll sell. Here's a funding source that I think most small upstart studios should consider. That's you guys. Work for hire. Now, this card is often used together with bootstrapping, particularly if you like things like eating or paying people for their time, at least some salary. The fact is that most people getting into the games industry have very marketable skills. You guys have very marketable skills. You have skills in programming, in art, in design, in communication, in storytelling, and you can use those skills to make money. You get money from those skills. Anyone in here has freelanced before, like as an individual freelancer? Yes, it's the exact same thing, just on a studio level. you can sell those hours individually, or you can make products or games for other people. Here's the pro. You make your own money, right? You make your own money. This feels good. You're the maker of your own fate, beholden to no one except the client, of course. But the problem, though, it diverts attention away from your game, the thing that you want to make, right? So by working on someone else's thing, you're not working on your own thing, and it becomes a balance. The special ability that is automatically played, this happens automatically, when you play this card, is the fact that you become what you work on. Just like when you're freelancing, if you and your team make something for someone else, you develop skills and opportunities in that direction, right? So be absolutely sure that it's something you at least is partially interested in and aligns with your long-term goals for the studio. The last funding source I want to cover is CoProduction. So playing this card means that you've found someone, like another company, to build something with. This is great because it can give you access to new skills and things that you don't have on your team. This could simply be money, but it could also be like a great IP or a technical skills or the right distribution partner. Co-production can really be a lot of things these days, but generally it's obvious that the lower risk to you also means lower rewards. You'll share in both the pain and the glory with your partners. Now, the special ability you want to use here is finding someone who can do something that you can't, right? Don't find someone just like you. Great. Okay, so that's a few of the funding sources that we've come into contact with. Short of the publisher and the investor, we've tried all the other ones. Before or very early on into this Lord of the Ring-esque journey you're going to go on of making a game, you're going to have to choose the right business model to turn this investment into profits. So let's play how to make money off your game. Let's look at some of the business model cards available to you. You're glancing down at your hand. What do I even have here, right? We're going to start with the most straightforward business model card, the one that's been played since the dawn of man, what's today referred to by some as premium, but really it costs money. There's something wholesome, clean, and nice about premium, right? You're selling a product, and it costs money up front for people to enjoy it. So you've made something, you value it, and you sell it. It's a very easy to understand concept. Now the problem with premium today is that it's what I call high friction distribution. So getting someone to pay money for your product is hard. It's harder today than it used to be. Even getting people to play your game today is hard. So it's like you take a percentage of those who are actually willing to pay money up front. It's a percentage of a percentage, and it won't travel fast in the market. Now, because the market generally wants free, who doesn't? Software has gone through this devaluation process the past couple of years, and there are many games out there offering experiences that are seemingly free. Now, you're competing with all of those other offerings if you choose this business model card. In most cases, depending on the platform and the store, you're also going to have to pay store cuts, which is usually around 30%. Now, there's many positions you can take on that, as we can see with the whole Epic versus Apple fight that's going on right now. But for better or worse, you're going to have to pay 30% of your revenue if you're distributing your game on console, on mobile, or on Steam. That's premium. Let's look at an alternative to that business model card. It's freemium. Now, the game is free to download. There's no cost up front, but additional charges can happen for more content. Now, freemium is a card that can be played with a lot of variations and in combination with some of the other business model cards that we'll look at. But generally, the big upside of freemium is low friction distribution. So your game is free, so there's no immediate paywall stopping people from checking it out. This means that you've removed one of the big barriers of market penetration, right? You could get lots of players to check out your game. The problem with freemium is that you now have to be really clever about how else to make money off your game. So you got people through the door, they're at your party, they're having fun, now they're enjoying your work, right? How do you sell them stuff? How do you make money off them, right? And freemium and its many combination cards puts a very big emphasis on business design to the point where it can negatively impact game design, right? So do you put content behind a paywall? Do you do microtransactions? Is the game ad-supported? Now, all of those add-on business model cards will require design changes to your game. And freemium games often have to beef up their meta game to give the player something meaningful to buy. So on mobile, one of the most popular combinations to the freemium business model card is ad-supported. You can have a lot of opinions on ads in games, and many people entering the games industry are serious gamers, right? And so most people, they usually dislike this card, developers themselves at least. However, let's look at the pros. So players, they pay with their time instead of their money. Now, there are literally billions of people who can't pay for your game. They might not have the money, or they might be kids and don't have access to money, right? But they got loads of time. Now, if you want them as players, ad-supported games are a great way that still allows them to experience your work while giving you some profit. Now, ad-supported models also support the low-friction distribution benefits of freemium in that the paywalls included are often optional, right? You can simply enjoy the whole game if you're just willing to suffer through some ads, which, contrary to what many gamers believe, a lot of people are. You got to imagine that those players would probably never have bought your game at premium, so they're kind of a market that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to get through to. So the problem with ads, what's the problem with ads? How long do we have? Ads are detrimental to the game experience. Like, while some demographics largely do accept them, we can all agree that interruptions aren't great for the gameplay itself. Now, there's a lot of clever ways to incorporate them, like rewarded interstitials, that's fused into the game design somehow. But generally, ads will always be this foreign entity into the experience that you're trying to give players. Now, ad tech is also an arms race, and it's very hard to grok for smaller developers. It's not just implementing an ad SDK and then being done with it, right? Today, you ideally use an ad mediation platform like AdMob. You set eCPM floors per region. You track, you analyze, you optimize. And if you're moving a lot of inventory, you can even make like exclusive deals with networks. You can end up spending a lot of time on this stuff. So, another thing we've seen proliferated in the game's business model is microtransactions. Again, there's a lot of nuance in how this is employed and how it interacts with some of the other cards like freemium, but generally using this is the act of selling smaller things within your game. Now, using this method, games can be parceled out into smaller investment for the player. Now, this supports the low friction distribution of shifting the value transaction from upfront to something that happens over time, so the player gets more and more invested in your game. Now, depending on how you look at it, there can be something nice about that, right? You're leaving it to the player to tailor their own experience and the amount of money they want to invest in various parts of your product. This is a way to broaden the demographic that can really enjoy your game while having everyone on an even footing while deciding whether or not people want to go for collectible things or skins or exclusive content and things like that. But everyone can enjoy the base game. So, however, we're also seeing some microtransaction fatigue and a desire to just get back to someone buying the whole experience without feeling like they're being nickeled and dimed along the way. There's also just a lot of ways of getting this wrong. Game design can devilishly be designed around players having to pony up large amounts of money to truly enjoy the experience or meaningfully progress in your game. Clever meta games, they trick people into buying like quick consumable dopamine fixes, right? To boost their immediate experience in your game. Loot boxes that needs to be purchased gives you this sense of luck and accomplishment in a game, right? And we do have words for these things. They're called addiction and gambling. And microtransactions as a concept isn't bad, it's just that it's being used for so many of these things that most of us don't really want to see in games. So here's another addition to the business model card hand, subscriptions. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening in this space, and we'll definitely see some more consolidation, but generally the idea is that you sell access to something for a reoccurring cost. Now, this is great. You'll get a predictable revenue stream from a loyal fan base, and they would like to pay you money continually to get whatever it is that you're making for them. It's wholesome and potentially very profitable. But there's also a lot of subscription fatigue out there. Everything is a subscription these days, right? And not everyone is looking to add your game to the list of things they pay for monthly. So the thing about subscriptions is also that you kind of need to give players something in return. Now, some games are more geared towards this, right? Access to online or competitive features, perfect for subscriptions. But other games will kind of need to continually add new content and support the game to make the subscription worth it and meaningful to the players. So you got to think about that if you're choosing to play this business model card. The last business model card I want to bring up is something I don't know. I didn't know existed when I started Northplay. Maybe you guys don't know it exists either. This is particularly interesting if you're making mobile games. It's OEM Vendors. Wow, sexy. They're entities that take your game and sell it on parallel stores and channels that might not, that you might not yourself have access to. So there's a whole mirror industry of games outside the App Store and on Google Play, which means that these people, they could be distributing your game as part of a French mobile operator subscriptions. We have that, or a very popular game store that's big in Brazil, and neither without cannibalizing your revenue streams from your traditional channels. So the good thing is that this is often money you didn't know you could make on existing products, right? All you need to do is strip it of its monetization and make an APK, and that is OEM vendor ready, and you ship it off to these people, they do their work. The problem with this type of business is that reporting is very often non-transparent, right? How many did you sell to the French operators? Let me audit your things. You'll sign legal documents that can be hard to figure out, and they have notoriously shitty payment terms, right? We'll get back to you in a year when we sell some, and you can send us an invoice for something, right? Okay, so those are all business models that we've experimented with. It's by no means an exhaustive list. There's ways to mix and match these, but it kind of covers a lot of what I think is readily available to developers today. Each of these obviously have very different merits on different platforms. Premium is more accepted on console and PC, whereas freemium reigns supreme on mobile. And it's not that you can't do premium on mobile or freemium on console and PC. There's a lot of very good stories about that, right? Fortnite is a freemium game on console and PC. Monument Valley is a very popular premium game on mobile. But playing these cards to platforms where it's not the norm, it might introduce friction. You gotta think about that. So the reason why I paint this whole card-based idea for you here is in the hopes that it will sort of bring down both funding and business models on this more tangible game level field, right? And I often feel like running a game studio is like playing a game. So to finish off the analogy, I thought I'd give a couple of quick examples of how this has worked out for our Conduct series of games, just to hammer home the point. So the first game we made was Conduct This, and it was bootstrapped. We played the bootstrap card, and while we did work for hire. That means that we were able to run an actual business and pay salary. This combination is something that's working out for us. And as we keep creative control and scheduling for our own products while building things for clients that we also find interesting. It takes a lot longer, but it feels more stable in the long run. Now, a mobile game that launched in 2016, the business model was obviously freemium. And it was ad-supported, and you could buy or simply buy an in-app purchase just to remove the ads, right? But I don't think I'm going to go as far to add the microtransaction card for that one IAP. Now, freemium and some featuring meant that we were able to grow the game organically to millions of players, and making the ad-supported card a lot more powerful. So later on, we've learned a lot, and the game has gone through many updates, and our ad-supported card has been upgraded with a lot more ad tech. And we also recently added subscriptions to the game, adding another business model card to the setup here. So it's been profitable and continues to be profitable, so you'll see us continue to invest in this title. Now, I thought as sort of a tiny post-mortem for each of these games, I'd just include one lesson. There's a million lessons for each game, one thing that I want to highlight when it comes to, for example, a free-to-play mobile game that's ad-supported, and that is ad mediation. we have been able to nearly double our ad revenue by implementing and tweaking AdMob from Google, letting us control how we sell our inventory of ads from multiple sources. So definitely look into that if you're doing a free-to-play game. So, okay, we thought, hey, let's bring this to Steam, right? This is a very popular game. We are gonna make a PC version. It was called Conduct Deluxe. Of course it was. And we added like a level editor. It wasn't just a port and we slammed it on. We added a level editor, did a lot of work that we thought, we are PC gamers ourselves. We thought this would be really cool. And we funded it the same way, bootstrapping and working for hire. And of course, with some of the money that we're now making for the game, the mobile game. Now launching on Steam and the Mac App Store, this is a premium title. And you know what? Has this been successful? Any guesses? Oh, am I gonna go out and take my helicopter away from here? No. It's not been successful in the sense that it hasn't made its investment back. So there's a whole post-mortem waiting to figure out why that isn't successful, right? And you'd be inclined to think that, oh, well, maybe mobile ports generally don't work well on PC, and maybe you're right, even though we did put in a lot of work to make it feel not mobile. One of the big things that you gotta do when you launch on PC that we did not do a lot of is wish lists. Building up a strong hype before launching it, or else you're just gonna be buried on the platform, which is kind of what happened to us. So get those wish lists going if you want to break into meaningful charts on release day. Think about things like early access. Do a lot of community building. Think of the most community building you could ever imagine and then double it. That's what you're going to do if you're going to have to sell games on that platform. Okay, so we didn't give up there. We thought like this premium version of Conduct, it could be cool, right? We thought, okay, let's make a Switch version. And we made Conduct together. And we spent about a year turning that game into a co-op multiplayer experience. It might look like a mobile game, but it's a very different game. Plays very differently. Tested it a lot. Had a lot of fun. We funded it the same way. And that is also a premium title. And that has done really well. So, but coming from the easy distribution on mobile, console development and marketing is a fascinating beast on console that we're still learning how to ride. And there is one thing though, I have to choose one thing to tell you guys that's really working for us. I'm gonna pay it forward, sales. The Nintendo eShop specifically thrives on sales, probably because it's a very simple system. We are continually able to get into the charts by periodically lowering our prices. We found this out by accident because when the corona hit, we wanted to do something, and as a small game studio, the only thing we could really do is try to give our games away for free. We thought that would be kind of cool. We don't have an investor, so we can do stuff like that. Nintendo wouldn't allow us to give it away for free. But in America, we were allowed to sell it for 1 cent. And we're like, okay, then sell it for 1 cent, whatever, right? We made money on that 1 cent. We got into the charts, got a lot of PR. It's been a whole thing. So if anyone ever want to talk console and sales and a mechanic there, like there's something going on there. I don't know how long that's going to be good for, but there's something there. So I could talk for a very long time about the many things we've learned with the games that we're making. I'm not going to do that because that's a different talk. Instead, I'm going to try to summarize a few things that I've learned about playing these cards right and about not dying in the games industry. Now, one of the things I think that needs to be said, it's crazy that we have to say this, but it's okay to make money off your art. Like, there's been like this prevailing indie narrative about the artistry of games somehow being counterculture to commercialism. And I think that is poisonous to the well-being of the industry. Like, making art and making money is very compatible. And some people really need to hear that there's nothing wrong or inherently evil about making money. To me, it's all about creating a sustainable platform to make more art, to create more experiences for people. Now, I wish this stuff was taught in schools, right? We need more business training. We need to get good at understanding the basics of running a business. And it needs to not just be okay, but desirable to make art that makes money. So the aim is to create a sustainable business. Now, in many ways, it's deceivingly simple, right? Making your things costs money. money to salaries, office spaces, lunch, software, all that stuff. And for it to be a sustainable business, it's our job to make sure that we're making more than we're spending. It's sort of a very simple math thing there, right? And that the risks that we are taking, because we will be taking risks, they are very calculated. One of the reasons why I think we haven't died yet is because we've diversified our income. Now, I try to never bet on one thing that puts all the risk on one thing working out. I almost always start from the assumption that an investment in a game will have a negligible return. And it doesn't, and when it doesn't, I'm like pleasantly surprised. I'm like, that's nice. Oh, we made money off it. That's cool. Yeah, that's great. And I've found that the industry sometimes produces the exact opposite mentality. It's like you're pitching your game to publishers, you're talking to investors, you're hyping the market, right? It seems like we're convincing ourselves that everything we do will turn into a smash hit, right? Even though all the data suggests otherwise. Like, we're not fooling anyone here. This stuff is really hard. Like the inoculation against this is to diversify your income and never bet on one thing. You gotta work for hire to bolster your liquidity, make more smaller games that each don't have to be smash hits. You gotta learn, you gotta grow, you gotta take calculated risks. Think of the long term, not the short term. This is a very unsexy thing that I won't get like roaring applauses for at GDC or anything like that, right? It is like, think about pension. Make sure that you're not throwing everything away on one thing. And it's not a cool thing to say, but it's the truth. So finally, I think one of the biggest realizations is that we need to come to, if we're going to change the Danish game industry, is that we are building studios, we're not building games. I think most people get into this industry because they have this game that they'd like to make, right? Many of you probably have that game inside you right now. You want to make this game? And to make the game, you have to set up a studio. And so it's game first, studio second. Now, this priority kind of cascades to a lot of the decisions that will impact your long-term ability to stay and grow in the games industry. Because when we're just trying to make that one game, we're much more likely to make decisions that's good for this game right now, but not necessarily good for the viability of the company that's building it. So that's what leads people to bet the farm on publisher deals or think up these multi-year projects for their first game, right? They're thinking about the game, they're not thinking about the studio. And I think if people thought the other way around, that you're building a studio, a foundation for you to create multiple games, you're building a business really, I think we'd see more people make more conscious decisions about the risks they're taking when they're choosing how to fund their games, how to spend their money, and what sort of business models they employ. Now, we need to start building studios and not just the next game. I want to end with another game analogy that I like. Building a studio is kind of like playing a roguelike with permadeath, and money is your health. Now, there is no guarantee that we will be around for another 5 years, because even when playing all the right sets of funding and business model cards, diversifying income and shipping products, you're still not safe in an industry that relies on making big, complicated investments at high risks. All you can do is really try to play your cards right and not die. Thank you.